When I was a kid, I grew up being trained by American media that Africa was full of just nothing but spirit chuckers and nothing ever came out of there. As an adult, I learned the truth. I learned the deep truth. I learned almost how deep that rabbit hole actually goes. I'm not at the bottom of the rabbit hole, but I'm getting there. This is an example of what African culture had. This is actually called African yoga. And then in a moment, I'm going to show you African martial arts. Now, there is a story going around that there was a African scholar named Bodak, I believe his name was, or something like that, who traveled to Asia and took martial arts into Asia. As he traveled, he studied certain animals and how they defended themselves and developed a martial arts system that spread into China. Okay? Now, this is not black people trying to steal others' history, but it's black people uncovering our history. Again, we're not trying to steal others' history, but trying to uncover our history. We have learned that we took rice into China. Africans took rice into China, and Africans were involved in the first dynasty in Asian countries. When you go to Asian countries such as Thailand and Cambodia, you see our faces on the wall. African faces on the walls of their temples. We traveled this entire world, and here's just one small example of that. This is a video called African Yoga. Let me show you a little bit further down as it gets a little more deep into it. You see the martial art stance and style. This is coming out of Africa. Been there for centuries, for time immemorial. Let me pause the program while I show you some African martial arts.
Find ourselves in the deification.
Okay, this is Ashra Kwesi. He's going to show you, he's lecturing on African Mantu, which is a martial art coming out of Egypt, looks like. And you can find that right here, African Nubian origins of martial arts. Okay?
Of somebody else's culture or some other people. Like, for instance, martial arts. If you go in a dictionary, you'll find that martial means a Roman god of war. Who would want to identify with a Roman god of war?
Okay, if you look on the wall here, these are the fighting systems. This is knife fighting right here, depicted on the wall. Let's go forward.
And especially when you look at the art
right here,
system, that all of you will have an equal chance to
right there, you see this right here? Arm, the left arm is up in a strike, right arm is blocking the other guy that's behind him. Right here, he's throwing. Right over here, he's throwing him. That's a throw technique.
The Mantu art form was an African defense system, long before a Roman god of war called martial art. Here you see another art form, even using the sticks and the art form. The one we look at is some kind of a karate chop. And then you see a flip that's taking place right here. So here you see, right.
Okay. So there are going to be people that are going to resist this truth that's out there, and they're going to be angry. And what you do is just smile at them, pat them on the back, and say it'll be okay. That's it. Okay? Good luck to you people.
African martial arts, discovering the world within, technique of the week. This week, we're going to work on elbows. You see, I have my thick glasses on today.
Now, the African martial arts are now being practiced here in the United States. We have seen African martial arts spread to other countries. If you've ever been to Brazil, did you know about the African martial art that they practice right up under the Portuguese slave owners' noses? And now capoeira is now a viable self-defense system practiced in Brazil. At capoeira, we also have the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Now that's Brazilian. That's their thing. but there is an element of the capoeira, and I'm sure they took elements of that from capoeira and as they created their Brazilian jiu-jitsu system, as all other martial arts do. Aikido came out of jiu-jitsu. Okay? So let's look at some of the elements here.
Right on crack, Jason. One of my a hook punch. I can use it to cover. He throws the hook punch on the other side. I use it to cover. He throws a straight punch. I use it to cover. He throws a straight punch.
Now in Africa, we know that they actually wore blades around their wrist, both in Kemet or Egypt, also in the country that also built pyramids, Sudan, down lower, okay? So they had these blades on the wrist. So when they block like that, they cut the other opponent up. The African martial arts system is right there on the walls of the Egyptian temples. Martial art was practiced all throughout Africa, as we now understand from our black scholars who went down there and studied this stuff and brought it back to us. They can no longer hide the truth from us, okay? Thanks to the internet, we're now talking and communicating and spreading the knowledge, the real knowledge and information out there. We got to ignore those black guys who are spreading fantasy crap. All we want to focus on is just the real knowledge. So this is just one of them. Let me show you some more examples.
African martial arts, discovering the world within, technique of the week. This week I want to...
Now you recognize those blades that they use in Africa. Only a small portion of Africa had jungle, by the way.
Deal with the principle. Deal with this video because infinite number of
Let me get to the real. You see the African blade there.
In Filipino arts in the United States. In my hand. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Now that's actually a mixture of knife techniques taught to American soldiers, people who study self-defense. So there's nothing traditionally African in that particular movement there, because I know that style myself.
Because this weapon is short, so the African didn't have sense to be able to go from a long weapon to a short weapon. We have that kind of sense that you can see that principle very quickly and easily. But you mean to tell me wise Africans could not go from this to this? Well, on the battlefield, you really didn't need this. You needed something a little longer. However, once you got in close, they had blades, which are closer to this length. This can translate easily into this for the street now. This could translate also into a rolled up magazine. It could translate into your fist because of angle 8. An angle 8, whether it's with this blade or whether it's with my punch.
Now, I don't know where they took the knife fighting system that's taught on the self-defense level, but as we know, Africans, they did fight with blades. They did use blades. So we come from a long history there, fellas, ladies and gentlemen. We have a long history back there that we need to delve into. We cannot trust what's coming out of the United States government as to the truth of our history. According to them, our history started with slavery, and that is just not the truth. We are the oldest people on this planet. At one time, this was a black-only planet. There were only black people on this planet. As we know, because of the last ice age, and I don't believe in that fantasy crap that white folks are albinos. That's just, to me, just angry fantasy crap. Science has taught us that white people were us. They came out of us during the last ice age. We lost our ability of our pineal glands to produce melanin for our skin. We also interbred with the Neanderthals because Europeans have 3 to 5%, if not more, Neanderthal DNA. That DNA is present within African Americans because of the rape of our ancestors. So we got it too. It's not only not present within pure Africans. So as the oldest people on the planet, we've done more than just sit in one country and chuck spears. We got up and moved around the world. Our bones were found in Romania 32,000 years old. 32,000 years ago, we were in Romania. Think about that. Romania. Okay? We've settled this entire world. You'll find our presence even here in the Americas. They now have uncovered bones, Africoid bones, 50,000 years old in South America. Now what they like to do, this is what they like to do. They like to say, well, it was the Aborigines. To take the glorification away from anyone who is black. But we now also know the Aborigines left Africa, traveled into Europe, and traveled along the coast of Europe through India down there, and they went over to Australia, and they've been trapped there for 50,000 years, if not more. DNA directly ties them to Africa. So they are not Aborigines, they are displaced Africans. And we see how the hair changed. Aborigines have those big afros. Some of them have straight hair. These are non-mulattoes. They have blondes. They have redheads. That's what the changes went through when we left Africa. Our hair changed. It got softer and longer because there was no longer an arid environment. So the hair began to change after generations. So you see, when we got into, finally spread eastward into Europe, we already begin to change. But they are us and we are them. Okay? Let's not get the shit twisted. It's not from some mad scientist inventing white folks in a laboratory. I don't believe that. As there's some myth out there going through the black community and create a race of albinos. And it's not from a purging of Africa of all albinos. I realize that the African race does have the highest number of albinos within us that we produce, but we can also produce every other race out there. No other race can reproduce us. We can reproduce them. The Asians have our features. If you go look at the Sans Bushmen, that is where the Asiatic feature came from. We can produce white folks, but they cannot produce us. They have a recessive gene pool, whereas we have a dominant gene pool as well as the Asians on the planet. Okay? That's some real truth for you. We've been around for a long-ass time. We have had civilizations. There are cities that are 70,000 years old found in South Africa. They're not letting us out. They're not going to let this out. The Sphinx has actually been predicted to be 12,000 years old. That's before the coming out of the ice age, the caves of Northern Europe of the Caucasian race. So they're not going to let that out. They're fighting that guy who has uncovered this. That means we built the Sphinx over 12,000 years ago. And of course, Napoleon's troops blew the nose off the Sphinx. If you look at all the other statuaries coming out of Africa, a lot of them, the noses are destroyed. Because you can't disguise that Africoid nose. But if we had lived in Europe, we had to change our nose. Because our nose would have caused our lungs to freeze in those sub-zero temperatures. And as nature shows, the right type of adaptation is allowed to survive. The poor adapted people, they die out. I'm going to be producing more and more shows on the real African truth. As I learn more and more, I'll pass that information on to you folks. Peace.